The Seul hung low over the ridge, painting the barn roofs in burnt gold. Dust rose from the wagon tracks where laborers had passed hours before. The ranch smelled of hay and sweat and something older, lingering in the corners where shadows pooled. The grizzled rancher leaned against the split-rail fence, hat tipped, squinting at the figure approaching. She moved slowly, her boots barely raising dust. Even from a distance, her eyes seemed to hold a storm. "You lost?" he called, voice rough from years of dry wind and tobacco. "No," she said. Her voice was soft, precise, as if each word had been measured before release. He studied her, coat long, worn at the cuffs, hands tucked into pockets, knuckles white. "You looking for work?" "Yes." She didn't step closer, just let the wind carry her stance toward the barns. He shook his head. "Ain't much to offer. Horses, feed, chores." "I can do chores." She tilted her head, scanning the far edge of the property where a lean-to sagged. Her gaze lingered longer than necessary, resting on a weathered wooden post with a name carved deep into it. He noticed but said nothing. "You know how to handle horses?" he asked, squinting. "Depends on the horse." Her eyes flicked briefly to his, calm, unyielding. The rancher nodded slowly. "Depends on the horse. I like that." He turned his head toward the laborers. "She can start by the east barn. Learn the ropes." A whisper passed between two men stacking hay bales. She didn't flinch, didn't even glance their way. She moved with deliberate care, boots crunching gravel, hands brushing the posts and railings, as if she was cataloging the property, memorizing its faults and fractures. "Name's Cole," he said, lowering his voice when she came within earshot. "Cole Harris. This here's my land, my rules." "Noted," she said. Nothing more. She let her gaze drift to the horizon again. There was distance in her eyes, a kind of quiet that made the air feel heavier. The rancher watched, unsettled by her stillness. Most people made noise when they arrived, small talk, excuses, complaints, but she had none. Only the wind and her boots. "What brings you out here?" he asked, curiosity sharp beneath the surface. "Needed work," she said. Simple, but her shoulders bore weight, like she'd carried it for decades. Cole frowned, sensing something he couldn't name. "And the rest of it? Life, family, past?" "I handle it," she said. Her voice didn't crack, didn't invite sympathy. A shadow moved near the fence line, a sheriff in a worn coat, wide-brimmed hat shading his eyes. He lingered, not approaching. Cole noted the distance, the quiet watchfulness. The law never touched much out here unless blood ran. The sheriff's presence felt like a warning, not protection. "You get along with others?" Cole asked, trying to break the tension. "I work alone," she said. She adjusted her coat and ran her fingers along the carved letters of the wooden post she'd paused by. Faint, weathered, names of those long gone. She lingered, tracing a curve of a letter, and then let her hand drop. Cole noticed the small pause and the slight tightening of her jaw. The rancher leaned on the fence again. "We've had folks come and go. Mostly they last a season, sometimes a year. You're quiet. Quiet's fine. Quiet's safe. Don't make enemies with the men here. They talk. They watch. They don't forgive." "They watch me already," she said. Her eyes met his. There was no challenge, no plea, just recognition. A mare neighed in the barn. She paused, looked toward it, then back at him. "Horses tell you things," she said. "You have to listen." Cole studied her hands, calloused but careful, strong but precise. "You run from something?" His voice lowered. "Or toward?" "Neither," she said. Her gaze swept the land. Dust motes swirled around her boots. "Just here." A laborer coughed near the hayloft, then moved on. Cole noticed the whispering again. They were unsettled, but she didn't seem to notice, didn't seem to care. That alone made her dangerous. "East barn," Cole said finally, pointing down a narrow path lined with split rails. "Unload feed, sweep, familiarize yourself with the horses. You start tomorrow. Today you observe." She nodded once, no smile, no hesitation, just a subtle tilt of her head toward the barn. Her fingers brushed the doorframe, lingering again on the worn wood, tracing patterns almost invisible to the eye. The carved name near the latch caught her attention again. She pressed her palm lightly, exhaling slowly, and then released it. Cole shifted his weight. "You all right?" "I will be," she said. Her eyes never left the wood. The rancher noticed the unease in the laborers, the way their whispers filled the space between the wind and the barns. Yet she moved through it all untouched, like she didn't belong to any of it, but belonged everywhere. Ranch has rules, Cole said, his voice harder. Don't test them. Don't ask questions that ain't yours. I know, she said softly. The sheriff stepped back into shadow, watching the exchange from the ridge. His presence was a reminder. No one here was truly free. Everyone answered to something, and some things, like grief, secrets, and vengeance, were heavier than the law. She walked past the barn stalls, her steps measured. Horses watched her with ears pricked, nostrils flaring. She didn't speak, she didn't flinch. She touched a fence post lightly, feeling the grain and the scars, the carved name again. She traced it, then let her hand rest against it for a heartbeat longer. Cole followed, careful. You don't talk much, he said. You'll need to. Horses talk back if you ignore them. I listen, she said, short, certain. The wind shifted. Dust swirled in lazy spirals around her boots. She stopped at the stable door, hand hovering over the latch. Her eyes held something, memory, sorrow, defiance, all folded into one. She didn't move, didn't speak, just paused. Cole stepped closer. You ready? He asked. She nodded once. I'll do as asked. The rancher studied her, noting the slight tremor in her fingers. He didn't know if it was fear or memory, didn't ask. Some things were best left unspoken. The laborers murmured behind him, guessing, whispering, but she remained apart, untouched by gossip, by curiosity, by pity. Cole exhaled, feeling a weight he hadn't expected. The quiet woman, stoic, unyielding, yet haunted, stood at the threshold of the barn. He realized he didn't know what he had just invited onto his land, and it unsettled him more than any store, him or outlaw ever had. The stable door loomed in front of her, weathered and scarred. She paused, hand on the latch, and for the briefest moment, the wind carried a whisper he couldn't catch. Then she pulled it open slowly, stepping into the dim interior. Dust motes danced in the shafts of late sunlight. Cole stayed outside. The ranch held its breath. Horses shifted in their stalls. Laborers stopped talking. The sheriff remained in shadow. She moved inside, quiet as a shadow herself, hand brushing another carved post along the wall. Names scratched deep, some long erased by time. She traced one, fingertips gentle, then let go. She stood in the doorway, a moment longer, then slipped inside. The air changed. Cole felt it, an unsettled energy, a quiet tension that wasn't going away. Outside, the ranch returned to its usual hum. But Cole knew something had arrived that day, something unspoken, dangerous, and resolutely human. And it all began with the quiet woman, the carved name, and the stable door she refused to pass without pause. Dawn crept across the ridge in pale gray streaks. Frost clung to the rails and ruts in the yard, and the air smelled of damp earth and hay. Cole moved first to the water trough, letting horses nuzzle his hands. She was already there, sweeping the east barn floor, broom strokes precise, almost ritualistic. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. No words, no smiles, just the unspoken calculus of trust. I saw something last night, Cole said finally, voice low, almost afraid to disturb the morning stillness. You weren't supposed to, she replied without hesitation, sweeping around the corner post where the shadows lingered thickest. Her gaze flicked to him for a moment, then back to the floor. I don't care about rules, Cole said, stepping closer, boots crunching over the frost. I care about the kids, about what's back there. They're safe, she said. Her tone wasn't defensive, it was flat, certain. That's all that matters. I saw them. 7 of them, Cole said. His voice was sharper now, frustration threading through the words. 7. And you hid them from me? I didn't hide them from you, not really, she said, continuing to sweep, almost casual. You weren't supposed to know yet. Cole exhaled hard, brushing frost from his coat sleeve. 7, he repeated, letting the word hang. 7 kids, hidden in my barn. Don't tell me this is normal. Don't tell me it's right. She stopped mid-sweep. Broom bristles, paused just above the straw. It's not normal, she said softly. It's survival. That's all it is. They need hiding. They need quiet. You can't fix the world. Only protect what's in front of you. Cole ran a hand through his hair. Hat tilted back, lantern still warm in the corner where it had been left. His eyes scanned the shadows of the barn, the posts, the floor. Each detail felt heavier than the last. Small shoes lined neatly, blankets tucked in corners, hay shifted as if it held secrets. He swallowed hard. "Do you know what you're asking of me?" "Nothing," she said. "You just have to leave them be, not interfere, that's all." "I can't just leave them," he said. "They're children, orphans. You think law doesn't see that? Don't see the danger?" "They are safe with me," she said. Her gaze met his now, unwavering. "Not everyone wants to harm them. Some just need shelter. Some just need patience. You don't get to be angry at them, Cole. You get to decide if you can trust them or me." Cole shifted, lantern catching the glint of badges on the wall. Forgotten sheriff insignias hung there, faded brass, symbols of authority he had always relied on. Now they felt hollow, almost useless. His hand brushed the brim of his hat as if anchoring himself. "Trust is earned," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "They've earned mine," she said, "by surviving." Cole crouched, brushing straw from the floor, noticing faint handprints along a post. Tiny, precise, evidence of presence he hadn't been meant to see. "How long have they been here?" "Long enough," she said. "Long enough to understand rules, to know safety in hiding. Don't ask for more than that. Don't try to pull them out of the barn. Not yet." "You're asking me to break everything I know," he said, "to ignore the law, the sheriff, the neighbors, to look the other way while kids hide in my barn?" "They trust me," she said simply. "That's why they're alive. That's they're here. You stepping in too soon could ruin it, could scare them worse than any danger outside." Cole ran a hand over his face. Frost collected in his hair, lantern light catching in the strands. "I protect people," he said. "That's my job, my rules, my land. I've always made the call." "And now you don't," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the cold morning. "Because the call isn't yours. Not fully. Not anymore." Cole stared at her. The weight of her words settled like dust. The barn seemed smaller, the horses shifting, the shadows moving slightly, alive. He realized the shift. She had the authority here, in subtle ways he hadn't recognized. Authority born from presence, from quiet control, from moral certainty. He felt it in the floorboards, the small shoes, the blanket tucked like a shield. "I saw their eyes," he said finally. "Fear, hope, both. I can't ignore that. They'll only open if you respect the walls," she said. "If you respect the rules of their hiding." Cole ran a hand along a post, tracing faint scratches made by tiny hands. "And you? How do you carry it?" "I've always carried it," she said. Her broom rested against her shoulder, stance steady. "You don't see it because you weren't meant to. I handle their fear. I handle the silence. You handle the land. That's all." Cole exhaled slowly, watching her. She moved toward the corner where blankets were stacked. A worn piece of fabric peeked out, faded and frayed. "They sleep here?" "Yes," she said. "And they eat. And they stay quiet. They survive because they trust walls more than men. Because they trust me." Cole's chest tightened. "I'm not used to being sidelined," he said. "Not here, not on my land, and I don't like it." "You don't have to like it," she said softly. "You only have to accept it, for now." A faint shuffle came from above the hayloft. Cole froze. "You hear that?" "They're watching," she said, almost a whisper. "They need to know you don't harm them. That you aren't a threat, that's all." Cole looked up. 7 tiny faces peeked from the loft, eyes wide and silent, reflecting fear and hope at once. He counted carefully, one by one, all 7. Small, tense, waiting. Some clutched at each other's sleeves, some pressed hands to lips. Silence was their armor, trust was their gamble. "I see them," he said finally. 7, all of them, alive. "Yes," she said, "alive, because we've kept the walls strong. That's why. You interfering would change that. You need to understand." "I understand," Cole said slowly, "but I don't know if I can let this go. Not fully. My instincts, they'll teach you," she said. "If you survive the morning, if you survive the day." Cole ran a hand along the brim of his hat, lantern light shaking across the floorboards. Badges on the wall reflected faintly. His hands lingered there, absorbing the weight of law, of authority, of power he had long assumed he wielded alone. Now it was fractured, uncertain. A subtle power shift. She was no longer just an employee. She was a keeper, a protector, someone whose authority he would have to negotiate. "I can't promise I'll always get it right," he said finally. "I'm not used to this, to holding back when I want to act." "You don't have to promise," she said. "You only have to follow the rules of now. Watch, protect silently. Let them choose when to step forward." Cole exhaled. Silence hung between them, heavy and tense. He could feel the shift in the air, the barn, the land itself. Control wasn't entirely his, not yet, not completely, not when 7 lives depended on walls, shadows, and a quiet woman's authority. He glanced up at the hayloft again. The children remained still, peeking, watching him with eyes too large for their faces. Hope and fears mirrored in those silent orbs. One of them, a small boy with a hand pressed to the rail, looked away quickly, as if caught in a test. Cole felt the weight of their judgment. "Don't let them down," she said. Her voice was calm, unwavering. "Or you'll never know how close you came to breaking trust you can't reclaim." Cole nodded once, lantern swinging slightly in his grip, hands resting over his coat, chest tight with frustration, fear, and the slow bloom of understanding. He realized authority was no longer only his. Power shifted with subtle choices, with moral restraint, with silent acknowledgement of what must survive in the shadows. The morning light crept stronger through the barn cracks. Dust motes shimmered. Horses stirred. Cole glanced at her. She returned his look, steady, unflinching, resolute. They moved in tandem now, not equal, not fully allied, but bound by necessity, by fragile trust, by shared acknowledgement of what could be destroyed and what must be preserved. Cole finally lowered the lantern slightly. "I'll follow," he said, quietly, "for now." "Good," she said. Her broom lifted, resuming its rhythm across the floor. "For now, that's all I need." Cole tilted his hat back further, looking at the children again. They blinked once, silently, and then ducked behind the hayloft. Eyes reflecting hope and fear lingered in his mind. 7 lives now, entwined with his own. 7 orphans whose trust would define him. He stepped back, exhaling, letting the morning settle over him. The barn smelled of hay, sweat, and possibility. Power shifted. Trust was uneasy, but for now, it held. Cole stepped into the stable just as the early light fractured across the beams. She was crouched near the hayloft, speaking softly to the children. 7 small faces peeked from the shadows, wide eyes reflecting fear and tentative trust. The air smelled of hay, sweat, and faint smoke from the hearth. A fire crackled in the small iron stove near the wall, casting gold across the worn floorboards. He shifted, careful not to startle anyone. "If anyone finds them," he said, voice low, edged with tension. "They won't, Shu," he replied without hesitation, tone calm, resolute. Her eyes never left the children. "I make sure of that." Cole swallowed hard, stepping closer. "This isn't just hiding. People talk. Families, authorities, old grudges, you know that." "They'll have to get past me first," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from a boy's face. "I've survived worse than whispers and lawmen." He ran a hand along a post, fingertips grazing splintered wood and faint carvings. "And the sheriff?" he asked, trying to gauge how much risk was already pressing in. "He won't be blind forever." "He's distant," she said. "Not blind. Distant. There's a difference." Cole exhaled. His eyes caught the letters pinned to the wall above the stove. Faded ink, trembling handwriting, names, pleas, fragments of lives that had intersected with his land long before he arrived. He glanced at the blood-stained fence outside through the half-open door. That memory of old violence pressed at him, familiar and unwelcome. "Old families," he muttered. "Some never forgive. Some never forget." "They won't forget. We just make sure they don't find a reason," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm, every word deliberate. "We do what we must." Cole crouched near the edge of the loft, careful not to invade the children's space. "You mean fight if we have to?" he said. "There's no other way." "Yes," she said simply. "Fight if we must. Protect always. Never reveal." The children shifted, small murmurs threading between them. He counted again. 7. All safe, all watching, all waiting. Their fear was palpable, but there was trust too, fragile and uneven. He could feel it as a weight pressing against his chest, tugging him toward them, tying him into their fragile lives. "We're taking risks," he said, voice tight. "If anyone finds them, it won't be just words. It could be fire, knives, whatever's left from old scores. They'll have to get through me first," she said again. Her eyes met his now, holding his gaze. Authority, certainty, and quiet defiance radiated from her. "You'll learn that, or you'll learn it fast." Cole ran his hand along the brim of his hat, tightening his grip. "I didn't expect this, not from you, not like this. I didn't expect to need help," she said. "But you're here. That's something. That counts." A breeze rattled the stable door. Frost drifted in from the yard, ghostly and cold. Cole's gaze swept the property, noticing the hills beyond, the bare trees, the way shadows stretched toward him like fingers. Danger could be anywhere, waiting. He thought of the old families, the grudges passed down like heirlooms. "They'll come looking," he muttered. "They'll come," she agreed, "and we'll be ready." Cole glanced at the hearth. The fire flared suddenly, sending shadows across the wall where letters were pinned. The old wooden beams, the post with its carvings. There was history here, old memory stitched into the land. He noticed her resilience, quiet and precise, the way she moved among the children, as if her own breath depended on them surviving. Her defiance wasn't loud, wasn't angry. It was deliberate, patient, unwavering. "I don't know if I can stay calm," he admitted, "knowing what's out there, knowing what could happen." "Calm isn't what keeps them alive," she said. "Awareness is. Read the room, watch the land, watch the people, listen. They trust silence, so do we." Cole exhaled, tension coiling in his shoulders. He glanced at the small shoes lined neatly by the loft again, the worn blanket tucked behind a post, symbols of care and presence, of quiet resistance against the world outside. "You've been at this long," he said, "all of it, alone." "I'm not alone anymore," she said, eyes softening for a moment. "You're here, that counts, that helps. But you don't. Interfere, not unless you have to." Cole nodded slowly. The power dynamics had shifted again in subtle ways. He realized he wasn't fully in control here. Authority came from presence, from understanding, from moral certainty. And she had that in abundance. He had the land, the horses, the rules. She had the lives within the walls. A subtle tension settled over him, both frustrating and oddly comforting. "If anyone comes," he started. "They won't," she said, finishing his sentence. "We'll make sure. You see the fire, the hearth, the walls. We make the world inside them safe. That's all we can do." Cole ran a hand over the blood-stained fence outside, remembering the past trauma etched into wood. That fence had marked violence once. Now it marked vigilance. He realized he wasn't just protecting property anymore. He was protecting fragile lives that had chosen this barn, this woman, over the outside world. "They trust you," he said finally, voice low. "That's why they're alive." "Yes," she said softly. "And they'll survive because we protect them. Not just with walls, not just with fire, but with understanding, with patience, with silence when it counts." Cole's gaze swept the stable again, lantern light bouncing along the walls. The horses shifted nervously, as if sensing tension. He exhaled, letting some of his authority go, letting the responsibility shift in small increments. They weren't just his rules anymore. They were theirs, a tenuous alliance, delicate, necessary. "I'll follow," he said finally, quietly, "for now, but I won't let anyone hurt them." "That's all I ask," she said. Her broom resumed its rhythm, brushing straw across the floor, gentle, precise. "For now, that's enough." A soft laugh escaped from the loft. One of the children peeked through the hay, eyes wide. Cole counted carefully. 7 small faces, fragile and tense, reflecting hope and fear, on equal measure. One child pressed a hand against the rail, daring, curious, then ducked back again. They watched, silent judges of his resolve. "They're watching," she said quietly. "Learning, testing, trust isn't given easily." Cole exhaled, stepping toward the door, eyes lingering on the children. "I understand," he said, "but every time I see them, it's harder, more responsibility than I'm used to." "And you'll learn," she said, "or you'll falter. That's the choice." Cole glanced at the fire again, embers flaring, casting the letters on the wall into brief bursts of shadow. Old pleas, warnings, memories pinned there like ghosts. He ran his hand over his hat, grounding himself, drawing strength from the familiar weight, but he knew it was no longer enough. He had to navigate new rules, new alliances, new dangers, and new authority. "You're sure about this?" he asked, voice low. "About the path we take?" "I've never been more certain," she said. "And you'll see. It isn't easy, it isn't simple, but it's necessary. And they survive because of it." The wind shifted outside, rattling the barn doors. Cole glanced at the hills beyond, noting the shapes of trees, the rough terrain, the way the shadows moved. Danger could come from anywhere, old grudges or fresh violence. He shivered, not from cold, but from awareness. "They trust walls," she said, "and they trust me. That's why they're alive. And now, you too. Tenuous as it may be, it counts." Cole exhaled slowly. The morning light strengthened, piercing the barn cracks. Dust motes shimmered, horses settled. 7 children blinked silently from the loft, eyes reflecting cautious hope and lingering fear. A scream rose from the distant hills, carried by wind, unidentifiable, uncertain. The echo pressed against the property like a warning. Cole's chest tightened. Her eyes met his, calm, resolute. A storm was coming, outside and within, and the fragile alliance between them would be tested. Cole nodded once, lantern held steady, hat pulled down slightly. "We protect them," he said, voice firm. "Together, in a matter what comes." "Yes," she said, sweeping, calm, precise. "Together. That's the only choice." The distant hills remained silent for a heartbeat. Then the scream returned, closer, fragmented, a promise of danger. Cole felt it in his bones. The ranch, the children, the fire in the hearth, all would be measured against the coming storm. And for the first time, he felt the shift not just in power, but in purpose, and the realization that the world outside would test them harder than anything they had faced before. The children remained in the hayloft, peeking quietly, fragile eyes reflecting trust, hope, and fear. And for the first time, Cole understood that protecting them meant more than rules, more than land, more than authority. It meant yielding, listening, and forming an alliance with a woman whose quiet defiance had become stronger than any law he had ever known. The scream echoed again, rolling over the hills, and the barn seemed smaller, more intimate, a fragile sanctuary in a world poised for chaos. Cole exhaled, steadying himself. Outside, the wind stirred the frost, carrying the distant echo, carrying the promise of a storm on the horizon. The scream had faded, leaving the hills ringing with its echo. Coley and the woman scrambled to the top of the ridge, boots skidding on frost-covered soil. The wind ripped across the landscape, sharp and biting, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant pine. Below, the barn crouched in shadows, hearth smoke curling faintly, children unseen but alive, hidden within the hayloft. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Cole asked, voice ragged from running, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon for signs of movement. "I didn't trust anyone," she said quietly, catching her breath. "Not for a long time, not even you." Cole's hand brushed against the brim of his hat. "We've been through this. You've got to start trusting someone, or they'll get hurt." "They've seen what happens when you do," she said, voice tight. "They've seen families break, law fail, people leave. I can't let that happen again." Cole ran a hand down a fence post, worn and splintered from years of storms. "You're not protecting them by hiding. You're protecting yourself too." "I know," she said. "But survival isn't about ease. It's about lasting. It's about making sure they breathe another day. One more day." The wind shifted, carrying faint rustles from the trees below. Cole glanced down, noting movement in the distance, shapes he couldn't yet identify. The hills felt alive, watching. He realized that danger wasn't just human. The land itself held memory, ghosts of grudges, echoes of old violence. He exhaled, stepping closer. "They trust you, but I need to trust you too. I can't protect them if you hold everything back." "They've been burned before," she said softly. "They need time. You're learning patience the hard way." Cole's eyes swept the ridge, then the creek running near the barn. He remembered the graves hidden among the trees, markers faded by time, soil pressed tight over old family secrets. "They've seen death," he said, voice low. "They know it. And you've been carrying it all along." They survived, she said. Her gaze flicked toward the barn in the valley, where the children were waiting, fragile and tense. That counts more than anything else. Cole shook his head. Surviving isn't living, he said. Not really. They deserve more. They'll live when it's safe, she said. Right now, they need quiet, safety, walls around them that even the law can't break. Cole glanced toward the broken swing by the creek, wood-weathered, rope-frayed. He remembered the stories of children who had played there, now gone, replaced by silence. Symbols of what had been lost, of fragile innocence. He touched the rope gently. They've seen this before, he murmured. Loss, betrayal. Yes, she said. That's why they trust cautiously. That's why you have to earn it. Cole took a deep breath, feeling the cold air scrape his lungs. I've protected people my whole life, made the calls, run the land, held authority, but this... He gestured toward the barn, the loft, the unseen children. This isn't about rules anymore. It's about them. And you. Power isn't always about authority, she said. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back, when to observe, when to let them lead you in small ways. Cole glanced at her, noting the set of her jaw, the faint tremor in her hands despite her composed exterior. Her resilience had hardened over years of careful defense. And now he understood that his usual control had limits. Authority had shifted, subtly, into her domain. Her command wasn't loud. It was careful, precise, and absolute in matters that mattered most. Show me, he said finally. Show me how to be part of it, without destroying it. Her lips pressed together, thinking. Follow quietly. Listen. Wait for them to decide when to trust you. Intervene only when it's necessary. Cole nodded, awareness settling in. He could feel the weight of old relics in the barn, the badges, the letters, the carved posts, all holding stories of survival and betrayal. Each piece marked history, memory, and quiet authority. He realized that controlling land meant little compared to holding lives. The children stirred faintly in the loft, curiosity flickering in the smallest gestures. Fingers pressed to lips, eyes wide, bodies tense. Cole counted again, 7, and felt a protective pull, stronger now, more deliberate. Bonds were forming. Their trust wasn't complete, but it existed in delicate threads he could feel weaving around his heart. They trust walls, she said softly, reading his thoughts. But walls are only part of it. You have to be part of it too. Cole exhaled. I can do that, but it feels fragile. It is fragile, she said. That's the point. Fragile is why they survive. Fragile is why they watch, why they test, why they wait. Learn to honor it. Cole glanced toward the creek again. Sunlight glinted off faint gravestones, the edges weathered and moss-covered. He recognized names, family histories intertwined with his own land, loss and secrets layered over generations. The children carried pieces of that legacy, so did she, and now he carried his part. They're counting on both of us, he said, and I can't let them down, not like the others before. You won't, she said softly, not if you understand, not if you accept that authority isn't just command, it's protection, patience, quiet vigilance, and empathy, all at once. Cole exhaled, the frost in his lungs mingling with rising wind. I've been a lawman, a rancher, a protector, never like this, never fully responsible for so many lives hidden in the shadows. You will adapt, she said, or you'll falter. That's the choice. They'll teach you, even if it hurts. He nodded slowly, feeling the shift in power, responsibility, and understanding. Authority was no longer absolute. It was shared, distributed, dependent on trust earned, observed, and returned. His eyes swept the ridge, the creek, the barn, the broken swing, the gravestones. History, trauma, and present danger layered into a tense mosaic. Show me the way, he said finally, through their trust, through the shadows. They'll guide you, she said, if you listen, if you protect, if you don't act for yourself but for them. Only then will you understand what survival means here. Cole glanced at the barn again, children silent, peeking from the loft. Small gestures, a hand pressing to the rail, eyes flicking toward him and back, fear and hope mirrored in their gaze, bonds forming in quiet moments. He realized the evolution of his role, not just authority, but protector, observer, participant in lives carefully hidden, lives that were fragile yet resilient. The wind lifted, carrying leaves, frost, and distant voices from the valley below. Cole felt it in his chest, responsibility, tension, and the fragile link to these 7 lives. "They're counting on both of us," he said again, "and I won't fail them." "You won't," she said. Her eyes softened, faint tears flickering in the corners. She watched him interact with the children as he descended the ridge, careful, deliberate, moving quietly but deliberately toward the barn. Each step measured, each breath tethered to the children's safety, each glance a silent acknowledgement of fragile trust being built. Cole crouched near the loft, hands extended, voice calm, gentle, inviting. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." A small hand reached toward him. Another followed. 7 tiny faces blinked, gauging, testing. Fear still lingered, but curiosity bloomed, delicate and trembling. Cole breathed slowly, matching their rhythm, letting the barn fill with quiet understanding, shared presence, and the first stirrings of trust. The woman remained at the hearth, broom resting at her side, eyes flickering with unshed tears. She observed quietly, allowing him space, allowing the children to engage on their own terms, knowing that the bonds being formed were stronger than any words she could offer. Authority shifted subtly, unspoken, reinforced by care, patience, and shared responsibility. Cole glanced at her briefly, nodding once. She returned the gesture, silent agreement passing between them. A fragile alliance solidified through trust, observation, and understanding. The children remained in the loft, small hands brushing against each other, eyes wide but calmer. For the first time, they allowed him closer, cautiously, tentatively. The sun rose higher over the ridge, frost glinting on the ground, fire in the hearth steady. Shadows danced along walls marked by relics, carvings, and letters. Past trauma, danger, and memory coexisted with fragile bonds, trust slowly unfolding, and the first tangible sense of security. Cole exhaled, letting the weight of responsibility settle but not crush him. He was no longer merely a rancher or lawman. He was a protector, a participant, and slowly, a presence the children could rely on. And the woman, silent, strong, and resolute, allowed herself a fleeting breath, watching trust build, eyes shimmering with quiet emotion. The shadows in the barn felt lighter, the air steadier, and the fragile architecture of trust beginning to hold. Cole stepped into the stable, boots scuffing the wooden floor. Horses shifted nervously, eyes reflecting lantern light and tension. A faint breeze carried shouts from the distance, ragged and urgent. Lawmen or bounty hunters, he couldn't tell. The wind tugged at the barn doors, rattling them against the frame. "You ready?" he asked, voice low, steadying himself against the rising fear. "As I'll ever be," she replied. Her hands rested on the broom, posture rigid, eyes sharp. She had been silent for hours, preparing the children, herself, and the barn. The soft glow of the fire cast shadows across her face, hinting at exhaustion, but also determination. The children huddled near the loft, small bodies pressed together. "We're scared," one whispered. "I know," Cole said, crouching to their level, "but we're together. That counts more than anything." A gust rattled the stable doors again. The fire in the hearth flared suddenly, illuminating the worn letters pinned above it, the carvings on the posts, the old relics from families long gone. The barn itself seemed to inhale and exhale, holding memories, echoes, and history in its frame. "They're coming closer," she said quietly, eyes scanning the ridges outside. "Keep the children near. Stay calm." Cole nodded. "They won't break through if we stay together." A shadow moved outside. Someone, or something, paused at the edge of the property. The children flinched. Cole held his hat in his hand, fingers brushing the brim. He felt the weight of authority, responsibility, and care pressing against him. "Stay behind me," he said. "All of you, trust me." "We do," she said softly. "I trust you." The first shout cracked through the dusk, words thrown, distant and indistinct, but urgent. Fear rippled through the children, but also a flicker of recognition, tension, not panic. Cole felt the past converging with the present, old memories, lost families, betrayals, and the fragile lives now in his hands. "They know about the children," he said. "They're not just coming for us. They're coming for them." "They won't succeed," she said firmly. "Not while we're here." Cole glanced at her, noting the resolve in her posture, the quiet defiance in her eyes. She had carried these lives alone for so long, navigating trauma, secrecy, and danger. Now he understood that survival wasn't just about defense. It was about resilience, vigilance, and careful command. A faint light flickered at the end of the barn. The children clutched the small blankets, fingers intertwined, eyes wide. Cole knelt, pulling a worn badge from his coat pocket. He held it out to the smallest child. "This is yours," he said, "a mark of trust, not authority. Trust." The child's hand trembled before brushing against it, eyes lighting up with quiet understanding. The gesture was small, yet monumental, a silent acknowledgement of connection, care, and protection. "They feel it," she whispered, voice low but intense. "The bond. That's why they'll survive." Cole nodded, exhaling slowly. The wind carried another shout, closer now, urgent and threatening. He felt it in his chest, the weight of choices, of past failures, of responsibilities once ignored. But he also felt connection, fragile but real, binding him to this woman and these children. "You ready?" he asked again, this time to the children. They nodded, hesitant but resolute. Eyes met his, reflecting fear, trust, and the small ember of hope. The first figure crossed the ridge. Lanterns bobbed, shadows stretching across the barn. Cole and the woman moved to the door, hands brushing against the wood, muscles tense. He drew the firelight closer, letting it flare across the space. Warmth, protection, and light became a barrier, not just physical, but emotional, a shield against darkness. "They won't see past this," she said softly, voice carrying over the crackle of flames. "Not if we hold." Cole nodded. "Then we hold." Shouts multiplied, horses stamped in the stalls, uneasy. The children pressed closer, small faces illuminated by fire. Cole crouched near them, offering calm, steady presence. She swept the floor slowly, rhythm and motion grounding the space. Shadows danced across relics, letters, carvings, and the worn wooden beams, all marking memory, loss, and endurance. "They're coming for the barn first," he said. "That's why we stay inside. That's why the fire matters. That's why walls and trust are stronger than force." "Yes," she said, "and they'll see. They'll understand. Not all threats are physical. Not all threats are immediate. We protect by presence, by vigilance, by courage." Cole glanced at the children again, 7 small lives now interwoven with his own. He felt responsibility fully shift into new dimensions. Authority alone was not enough. Presence, patience, trust, and courage defined his role now. He exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. A figure appeared at the door, lantern raised. The shadows flickered across the floor. Cole and the woman stepped forward together, standing between the children and the outside world. "You shouldn't be here," Cole said, voice firm. "Not tonight." "Orders say otherwise," one of the figures called. "Back," lantern swinging. "We have claims. We have rights. Move." "They'll have to move past us," she said, quiet but unyielding. "We're not leaving." The figure hesitated. The fire flared again, casting warmth across the barn, making shadows dance. Cole held the brim of his hat, feeling the weight of choices, responsibility, and protection. The children pressed close, silent, watching, understanding more than they should. "They know we're ready," Cole said softly. "They'll test, then retreat, or they'll try and fail." "They'll fail," she said, "because we're here, because we care, because trust can be stronger than force when wielded correctly." The first figure stepped closer, lantern shaking. Shadows touched the barn walls, flickering across relics, letters, carvings. Small shoes neatly lined, memory, history, and presence combined in the space. The children watched, small eyes reflecting fear and hope intertwined. Cole moved slowly, deliberately, maintaining calm, offering presence, allowing trust to guide him. "Stay together," he whispered, silent, steady. "We don't rush. We observe. We act if necessary." The figure stopped, assessing the barn, the fire, the people within. A tense pause stretched across the dusk. Then, and slowly the figure retreated, signaling others. The wind carried their retreat, fading into distant shouts. The barn remained intact, the fire steady, the children trembling but unharmed. Cole exhaled, letting tension drain. He turned toward the children, crouching again. "See? Together. Safe. For now." They blinked, small smiles forming, hesitant and fragile. Laughter broke out softly, quietly, under their breaths, a sound of relief and resilience. She moved closer to Cole, standing beside him, eyes glinting with unshed tears. Wordless acknowledgement passed between them: survival, trust, shared responsibility, and the quiet formation of family. Cole glanced at the stable door. Finally, it felt like sanctuary. Open in spirit as well as in structure, protection and warmth filled the space. The fire burned brighter, a signal of human connection, resilience, and new beginnings. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting gold and crimson over the plains. Frost glittered on the ground, wind still sharp but gentler. Cole and the woman stepped to the doorway. Children pressed near, watching the sunset, small faces alive with cautious joy. The breeze carried distant echoes of the night, but it no longer felt threatening. Bonds had been tested, and fragile trust had held. Past trauma, danger, and secrets lingered, but resilience and human connection prevailed. Cole handed the badge to one of the children again. Fingers brushed, eyes wide with understanding. "Keep it," he said softly. "It's a reminder of trust, of being together." The child nodded, small lips curving into a quiet smile. Others followed, tentative, still watching, still learning, still forming bonds. She leaned close to Cole, whispering, "We did it. For now." "For now," he repeated. Eyes on the children, eyes on her, he allowed himself a brief, steady breath. Shared survival, shared trust, and a fragile but present family. The sun finally touched the horizon, gold spilling across plains, barn, and ridge. Children laughed softly, wind in their hair, frost glinting on boots and blankets. Cole and the woman exchanged a final wordless glance, acknowledgement of endurance, quiet triumph, and the formation of a family stitched together through danger, trust, and unspoken understanding. The barn doors swayed gently. Fire continued to burn. Shadows shifted, relics of the past resting quietly, the weight of memory held in place. The day ended, and with it, a reckoning, not just with external threats, but with fear, trauma, and the fragile art of protecting human lives. They stood together, watching dusk settle over the plains, the wind soft now, carrying whispers of resilience, safety, and hope. Children pressed close, fire warm, bonds solidifying. The ranch, the barn, and the 7 lives within held firm. And in the quiet glow of sunset, Cole and the woman understood what trust, protection, and newfound family truly meant.